Hello, this is Mr. Manley. We're going to take a look at a method for graphing a sine and cosine function. You notice that I'm going to be working with a cosine function, but the process that I'm going to use works with a sine function as well. We begin by looking for what we're going to use as the first point, really the first x value is what I want to do. And I'm going to do that by taking the argument, and that is whatever we're taking the sine or cosine of. In this case, 2x plus pi. And I'm going to set that equal to 0 and solve for x. So we get negative pi over 2. And that's going to be my first point. So over here, if you look to the left, I'm going to set up a xy t table. X, f of x, as the case may be, and this I'm just going to label it with a 1 there, and that's the first point that we're going to find. So this over to the right here, that's a 0.1, and that's going to be negative pi over 2. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is find the step. All right, the step depends upon the period, and I could have talked about that at the outset, that the period is equal to 2 pi over whatever the coefficient on x is. So it's always, for sine and cosine, it's always 2 pi, and then I put that over whatever the coefficient on the x is. So in this case, it's 2 pi over 2, which is pi. This is the period. Now our step, moving back down to the right here, is the period divided by 4. In this case, that's pi over 4. And what that means is this point over here, go back to the t table, this point, I'm going to step up pi over 4 from that point and find 4 other points. So it's going to be negative pi over 2 plus, so I'm going to add pi over 4 to negative pi over 2, and I can just look at that real quick. If I go negative pi over 2 plus pi over 4, that's going to be equal to negative pi over 4. So I started with the negative pi over 2, and then I stepped pi over 4, and I ended up at negative pi over 4. Okay? So that's how we're finding the next point, negative pi over 4, and then plus pi over 4. I'm going to take the same step. Plus pi over 4 is going to take me to 0, plus another pi over 4, and then plus pi over 4 is taking me to pi over 2. And once I get those points, then it's a simple matter of evaluating this function for each of those values. So I'll do this down here. Well, that's a big part of it. And then the final part of it is going to be how do we graph those points? Okay, so I've got the 2x plus pi, and I'm substituting in negative pi over 2. So I have negative pi over 2 times 2 is negative pi plus pi is 0. So if you're not seeing how I'm getting the 0 here, I'll just write out this first one here, that this 0 is coming from the 2 times negative pi over 2 plus pi. So that was just that I substituted this negative pi over 2 for x. Okay? All right. Then let's do the rest of these. All right, so here are the rest of these. Substituting the values of x and then seeing what do I need to evaluate here. What's the negative 2 cosine of 0? What's negative 2 cosine pi over 2? What's negative 2 cosine pi, etc. So we'll just take a quick look at that. I'm going to go to another page here. And just recall that cosine of 0 means that I go to 0 on the unit circle, the angle of 0. So look at the unit circle up to the right. And I see the 0 here, and then I want the x coordinate. So the cosine of 0 is 1. So this is negative 2 times 1. The cosine of pi over 2, I go here to pi over 2, and I take the x-coordinate is 0. So the cosine of pi over 2 is 0, and that's negative 2 times 0 is 0. And then cosine of pi, going here, and the x-coordinate is negative 1. So that is negative 2 times negative 1, which is positive 2. Cosine of 3 pi over 2, here, the x-coordinate is 0. So that's negative 2 times 0 is 0. And then finally back around to 2 pi, and I get negative 2 times the cosine of 2 pi, which is 1. And I can go back and fill in those points. So what was that? That was negative 2, 0, 2, 0, negative 2. Now, going to the graph, there's a little bit of thought going into how I'm doing my scale. So here, see that I'm going from negative pi over 2 to negative pi over 4 to 0. So actually, I'm going to adjust this from the way I've drawn it. So I'm going to take that y-axis and I'm going to move it so I can do this. All right, now I'm going to put these lattice points here and think. And what do you think? I mean, typically, I wouldn't say I'm going to say all the time, but typically the scale is going to be whatever the step is. So I'm going to take my scale here on the x-axis, and I'm going to call it pi over 4. And then along the y-axis, I'm going to go 1. All right, and then we just plot these points. Negative pi over 2, negative 2. Oh, I don't want to use a scale of 1, right? Because I need to go to, if we look at the outputs, I need negative 2 and 2. So, I mean, it could still work with the space that I have. So, let me just extend the y-axis a little bit, up and down, and we should be able to graph that. So, I would go negative pi over 2. So, if this is pi over 4, then I'm at negative pi over 4 here, and then negative pi over 2. And then we'll graph that point. Negative pi over 2, negative 2. So it's here, and that is 1. Then I'm going to be down 1, 2. I'm down here, way down at the bottom of the screen. And then negative pi over 4, 0. It's going to be here. 0, 2 is here. Maybe I should do this in a different color, but hopefully you can see. I've got there, 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 and then pi over 4, 0, which is there, and pi over 2, negative 2, down here. And those are the 5 points that I need, and I'm just going to smooth the curve through those, a little cosine wave. So I'm going to go up through there, up to the top point, curve back down, and down through the low point. And then typically we want to do, often we want to do 2 cycles. You sometimes ask for that. Your text will probably ask for that. So I'm just going to follow the pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. See? It doesn't take much to get a second cycle here. And then smooth the curve through those. And there it is. So that process of using the, of using the first point and the step to get these x values, the way that we've done it here will apply to sine and cosine. We'll actually use something similar, but not precisely the same for all of the other trigonometric functions. Okay, so I hope you can graph those. Also, you'd want to be prepared to answer questions about the period and perhaps the amplitude, which we didn't say anything about that here, but the amplitude is 2. We're getting the amplitude from this spot here, and it's never a negative for the amplitude. It's always a positive value. Okay, so hopefully you can graph a sine and cosine function now, and good luck.